In this video, we are talking about what macros are and whether you should be tracking them to help you lose weight. Now, first and foremost, it's important to understand that the leanest people in the world all track macros, so they're really useful. So we're going to go through a whole bunch of stuff, what they are, the ratios, tracking, and then I'm going to tell you at the end a really simple fat loss hack, how you can get a lot of the joy out of kind of tracking macros without actually having to track them. So this is the fourth video in our fat loss framework series. We are looking at the more detailed side of nutrition for physique focused fat loss, which means we're looking at macros because this is what everybody tracks in order to get really lean. Let us get into it. So we're starting off with what are macros. Macros are your macronutrients. So they're the nutrients that provide more energy. So you have your micronutrients, which is just minerals, vitamins, but they don't provide a lot of kind of calories of energy. Then the macronutrients are the ones that provide the energy to kind of sustain your life. So the basics are protein, fats, and carbs, and then you have kind of fiber and alcohol. Well, I'll stick to the main three in terms of kind of what they are. I'll just throw up a graph now. This shows the energy, the amount of energy per gram of the macronutrients. So fat has like 9, alcohol has 7, carbohydrates have 4, protein has 4, and then fiber has like 2. So basically these are the building blocks. So protein is important for building muscle mass, retaining muscle mass. It's the most important macronutrient in terms of sustaining life. It's just really important, really. It's also very thermic, so it helps keep you full. Fat's really helpful for maintaining hormonal health and just general health. And then carbs are really about energy, ATP production. They can be, you know, really good for high intensity exercise and really good for, you know, general exercise and energy. So let's just quickly talk about, for most people this will be a bit simplistic, but for a lot of people it might be useful. So very quickly I'm going to touch on which foods contain the different macronutrients. And when people start tracking their macros, they tend to focus in on kind of foods that are dominated by one macronutrient. So the ones that have the most protein, lean proteins, that's the lean meats, chicken, pork, fish, lean cuts of beef, protein powder, low-fat Greek yogurt, these types of things, they are protein sources. Their primary macronutrient is protein. In terms of fat, you know, oil has fat, the yolks of eggs have a fair bit of fat, your oily fishes, nuts, avocados, great sources of healthy fat. And then carbohydrates, there are the starchy carbohydrates which have lots of energy, which is things, you know, potatoes, rice, oatmeal, and then all your fruits and vegetables, although they don't have a lot of energy, they're primarily carbohydrate, kind of fibrous carbohydrate. So that's what they are. One of the ways in which kind of macros can be really useful is just understanding or categorizing the different diets. So this shows up the kind of diet ratios, so macro ratios explaining the different diets. So you'll see the really lowest form of carbohydrate diet is the ketogenic diet, way down at like 5% carbs, and then you go way up to some kind of vegetarian and vegan diets. People might be eating, you know, 80% carbohydrate. The Okinawans, one of the longest lived societies, eat tons and tons, like 85% carbohydrate. The standard American diets, you know, a lot of junk, dense food, about 50% carbs. The Mediterranean is even lower, quite balanced, and then obviously low carb is low carb. So should you track? Now, this is the weird thing. There tends to be people that track macros and people who won't go near it. And this bothers me endlessly because macros are super powerful and you don't need to track all your macros to benefit from understanding macronutrients, right? So you don't need to track, as a bodybuilder would, all your carbs, fats and proteins within 5 grams, your fiber as well, know your supplements and do that every day of the week. That's just nuts for most people. What you can do is just, this pyramid is a progressive approach. So you could just start off tracking calories on a few days a week or a few meals. Then as you get more serious, maybe on weekdays you could track calories and protein. Then if you get really serious, you could track your protein, fats and carbs. So this would cover your calories as well on all your weekdays, maybe 6 days a week, maybe even 7 days a week. But you can work your way up. And if you know, go the full masochist, you want to do a bodybuilding show, yes, you'll do your supplements, you'll do all your macronutrients with a 5 gram range. But there are ranges. This is a spectrum. You don't need to track all your macronutrients to benefit from understanding macros in the first place. And this is what bothers me, this kind of black or white thinking about macros. You can have tons of benefits without tracking them, just by understanding them. Just having a daily protein target. Wonderful, wonderful idea. Setting your macros. Now we're getting into the tasty stuff. Now this is for physique focus. There are kind of two ways to do this actually. There's the traditional bodybuilding way, which is kind of set your protein, fats, then carbs. And then there's the ketogenic day, which is kind of set your protein, have a small amount for your carbs, and then the rest is fat. So fat is a lever. I'll just tell you the traditional way, pretty simple. So you set your protein first. A classic number is 1 gram per pound of body weight. So if you're a 180 pound guy, you go all the way up to 180 grams of carbs. Or you could use your target body weight. If your target body weight was 160, set your protein first. So 1 gram per pound of body weight. Then next up, you've got your fat. You could take 25% of calories or 0.4 grams per pound of body weight, and then you set in your fat. And then whatever you've got left over, say you've got 1,000 calories left over, you divide that up by 4, that's your carbs, 250 grams. If you've got 600 calories left over, divide it up by 4, 150 grams. If you've only got 400 calories left over, then you've only got 100 grams of carbs. And that is how people set their macros. It's not very complicated. The problem is knowing your calories to begin with. Then, this is the important thing, adjusting your macros. This is how people get very, very lean. They set their protein, they've got their fat, and then they leverage their carbs down over time. They make little adjustments. They take away 25 grams of carbs or 10 grams of fat. So there's 100 calories. 25 grams of carbs, 10 grams of fat. And they make adjustments based on their progress. And that's the best practice of how to use macros well. Most of those cuts will come from carbs, sometimes from fat. They tend to protect protein, but that is how bodybuilders get very, very lean, by tracking their macros and adjusting them. And finally, I've gone through all that sciencey stuff. Let me give you a very, very simple tip of how to lose weight using macros without counting them. You want to eat more protein, eat better fats, and eat fewer carbs without becoming a carb phobe. You've got no need to fear carbohydrates, but simply a lot of people who aren't that active eat hundreds and hundreds of grams of carbohydrates, and they're pretty crap carbohydrates. They're very dense. They're one of the reasons they're overeating in the first place. If you can switch some of those poor starches and hyperpalatable kind of carbs into better starches and lots of fruits and vegetables, you just eat slightly fewer carbs without demonizing carbs. That's a great way to go. So more protein, better fat. Better fat is healthier fats as opposed to kind of added fats, and fewer carbs, and you are on your way. That is the end of the nutrition section. In the next video, we're going to start talking about the 3 levers you have to adjust your energy expenditure, which is your activity, your cardio, and your strength. And we are starting off with activity and why you should be walking more when you're trying to lose weight.